Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community, we were to go racing with the B-Class budget cars, so the basic car had to cost 20,000 credits or less. Our first race was at the Catalonia National Circuit, and despite a very good launch from my Monte Carlo, there wasn't really anywhere for me to go with it. It is a very nasty turn one down here, gets very crowded very quickly, especially if you're further back, can often be quite difficult to see. I tried to make the most of a good initial launch, made up a few positions, mostly was trying to survive a little bit of chaos that was going on, just too many cars trying to fit into the same piece of tarmac. Didn't really work. The Monte Carlo had made it through, but as you can see up ahead there was still a big angry pack of cars, and even behind me at this stage still angry groups of cars that are always interesting on these opening laps. A few cars having to take some avoiding action around the hairpin on this opening lap. There was kind of two huge groups already halfway around this first lap, forming me at the back of one of them, trying to look for a way past a BMW. I spot an opportunity, get the cutback on the exit of this turn, will put me up alongside. I can't really dive too far up the inside though, because, well, there's a Celica in the way, which keeps the BMW alongside as we go into this very nasty, very narrow chicane. Incredibly tough to get overtaking maneuvers done through there. However, we give each other just about enough room to make it through the turn. The BMW tries to stick it around the outside. He has a good initial kind of drive off the turn, but none of the cars here are a match for the Monte Carlo straight line speed as I go past the Celica and the Subaru Brat. I'm also bringing, I think, a Mustang was coming as well a little bit. It's almost three wide up ahead in this battle. It was, very busy as we come down to one. MX-5 has just ran out of road slightly through that corner. I got a little bit of a breather back to the angry pack behind. Celica is relatively close behind, but I've got the acceleration as we come up the hill. That puts me on the inside of an Eclipse that's got a bit of understeer and he can't quite carry the speed around the outside. Celica is going to get up alongside and past the Eclipse as well. As it was a frantic opening lap. This was certainly for me a very frantic opening lap, and further back it was still kicking off as we went on throughout the race. This Honda Civic here was coming under fire from a Camaro. There was another Civic, an MX-5, an Opel Kadett. We're all in the mixture. The Civic's now having a look at the Kadett that was leading this little group. The Camaro was struggling for straight line speed, but was doing pretty well through the corners. Almost had a sniff up the inside around that final turn. Pretty much flat out though around there. Very tough place to really do an overtaking maneuver, and with just lacking that little bit of straight line speed, the Camaro was never likely to be in range by the time they got down towards turn one. The Kadett very fast in a straight line, was tried to go past the Mustang. Unfortunately, the two cars got locked together, with one car just kind of slightly tagging the rear quarter of the other car, and then they can't turn, and then everybody goes straight on. So a little bit unfortunate for them, taking a couple of cars out of the battle here. The Civic though is still under threat, of course. As soon as they get to the twisty turny bit, that Camaro catches up quite a lot, and sure enough, the Honda pushed his luck a little bit too much, ended up out wide, managed to somehow slot back in between the Camaro and the MX-5, just about gets away with it. There's only millimeters to spare, and sure enough, the Mazda still got a good run down this next corner, will get up the inside and pass the Civic. The Honda tries coming back, but doesn't have the acceleration. The Kadett now joining in, having a look, and when you're in a group like this, just that one little mistake cost him 2 places, could have easily cost him 3 as well. You can't afford to be running that little bit wide through some of these corners towards the front, and we did start to spread out as the race progressed. The Celica was coming under increasing threat from this BMW. The BM gets a big slide out of the chicane. The Celica gets a very big slide out of the final corner. BMW finally getting the drive around the outside. However, we come to the longest straight on the track, and the Celica had some pretty decent straight line speed. It was enough to fend off the BMW. However, you've got to make sure you get the braking point right down towards this first corner, and sure enough, the Celica trying his best to defend his position, just outbraked himself that little bit. You can see him struggling for some grip there, and a relatively easy cutback for the BMW. These two continue to race-long battle. The Civic and MX-5, having got tangled on the opening lap and dropped through the field, they were both very quick cars, and were catching up to the rest of the pack as they squabbled for position. The MX-5 managing to get the move done on the Honda. We're seeing quite a lot of passes going on through the chicane, more than perhaps we normally do. It's a nasty place. Try and get overtakes done cleanly through there because it is so narrow and such a slow section of track. But yeah, we did have quite a few overtakes going on there. The Civic was catching the MX-5 at the end of the straight. Thought he had a long, hard think about going up the inside there. Just changed his mind at last minute. Probably a wise decision. Wasn't really quite close enough. But yeah, those two had remained close for the entirety of the race. At the front, and it was a BMW, an M3, that was leading the way, and that would go on to take victory. Having started towards the front, managed to escape the early chaos. The front, the leaders, certainly the lead sort of 4 or 5 cars, did have quite a large margin over the rest of the field, having managed to get out of the chaos. The M3 weathered the challenge from second place. I think second may have made a little mistake, certainly dropped back on this final lap. But yeah, I think it's an M5 in second, got close, but couldn't quite do anything about going for the lead, with an MX-5 coming home in third. Race number 2 would go to the Road Atlanta circuit. Again, quick start from my Monte Carlo, but not as quick as a King Cobra. Managed to get myself boxed in behind a Beetle. Not as quick as a Mitsubishi Galant either, although the Galant will get himself in trouble out wide coming into turn 1, giving a slight assist to a Cadet. The rest of us, though, made it through just about the opening corner, as I was right up behind the very fast starting King Cobra, but the Mustang a little bit slow off the top of the hill and getting boxed in by an Integra. I sweep around the outside of the pair of them. Nissan has an argument with the curb and loses while I'm busy looking for a way past a Mazda, the King Cobra, and I think an Integra don't quite get things right, and they end up in a little bit of trouble while I'm still having a look for a way past this RX-7. Thing with the RX-7, very little corner grip, but had a quad rotor, so incredibly fast in a straight line. So while it is no real problem for me to put my car on the outside and simply drive around the outside of that RX-7, it really wasn't that hard to get my car to do that. The Monte Carlo, pretty damn good car, pretty good handling car. I liked it. However, now we come to the straight, and while it was pretty quick at Catalonia against rivals such as the RX-7, it was never likely to stand a chance. The Mazda goes soaring past while I'm stuck underneath the back of a Mustang and get past another Monte Carlo. Unfortunately for the RX-7, gets a huge twitch under braking, can't keep it under control, and ends up in the gravel. I have a big, slightly accidental dive, I will be honest, on the Mustang. Didn't quite get my braking point right. I did get up the inside, and he did give me room, so we didn't have coming together. I managed to get myself to second place, but that wasn't necessarily going to last particularly long, because, as the story of my race would go, certainly many Mustangs were coming to attack my Chevy. I got a two-wheel moment that slowed me down across the top of the hill. That would allow the Fox body pass. Now it was the time of the King Cobra as he runs through this next corner. The King Cobra did not have a huge amount of grip. You see it wiggling over the road. I could carry a lot more corner speed than it. However, it was mighty fast in a straight line, and while I was still busy trying to see if I could have a look at the back of the Mustang ahead, I couldn't quite do it, and in doing so, slow myself down a little bit. Not as much as the Monte Carlo going for some slight exploring over there, but yeah, with a slightly dodgy run onto the straight and simply not having the power of this King Cobra, the Mustang would come, yeah, pretty comprehensively flying past. There was nothing I could do about that straight line speed, although these cars weren't quite as ridiculously fast as the RX-7. They were a little bit more controllable, even though you see the big wiggle from the Mustang again under braking. That's a horrible braking zone down there. The crest of the hill for normal cars isn't a problem, but for some of these high-powered crazy cars, they can have some big issues. I thought about going to the inside, realised the gap was going to vanish, ended up going across the grass, slowing myself down some. And speaking of crazy cars, the RX-7 was finding itself in a battle with all sorts of vehicles in this race, primarily with, what was it? There's another Fox body Mustang behind him as we have a big slide coming up the hill. Behind them there was another little group arguing for position. The Mustang tries to get to the inside at the top of the hill. There's just not quite enough space for the cars to get there. No real matter though, as they come slipping and sliding their way down this next corner. The Mustang's around the outside. That is a tough place to get overtakes done, especially on a car that you can see is sliding down that course. Mustang does a great job of getting the pass cleanly done around the outside, but he's got to make the most of the corners. Road Atlanta is a fascinating track actually to try and build a car for, because you have one humongous straight, but you have so many fast corners that you've got to be, you've got to have that little bit of handling, and their battle would go on for a couple of laps. Monte Carlo actually proved to be a relatively popular car. Surprised, I wasn't expecting to see very many of these turn up, but there's quite a few of them, and two other Monte Carlos found themselves battling each other, I think, over around 8th place. Then Opel Kadett was joining in, another Mustang was, or the Mustang was going to join in this little group as well, as the Kadett gets very, very sideways. The grey Monte Carlo here gets up alongside, going to the inside of this next turn. The black car, though, is going to try and hold it around the outside with a couple of wheels on the grass. He manages to make it stick. The grey car gets up the inside, though, for the next turn as they head towards the long straight. But now it's all about the straight line speed. The handling cars have made up their time. Now it is for the power build, and of the two Monte Carlos, the grey vehicle was just lacking a little bit of straight line speed. They were both, though, far slower than the Opel Kadett that came flying past and is now up alongside the car ahead. The Mustang is getting involved as well, as they're going to go 2 by 2 down towards the nasty final chicane. The grey Monte Carlo very nearly ended up in the back of the vehicle ahead, just about manages to get away with it. And now you've got to be very careful when you're in the middle of this group. You want to attack the car ahead, but it's so easy to just go a little too aggressive and then lose the position, or 2 positions, to the car behind. Kadett gets a big slide around the final turn. The Monte Carlo we're following gets the best run off the turn of the lot of them, but we've already seen he was struggling a little bit for straight line speed as we run down towards the first corner. The Cadets in all sorts of trouble out wide, smoking the tyres across the curb, and now we're going to fit 4 cars into a very, very small piece of tarmac. The Mustang's around the outside. He manages to get the place on the Monte Carlo. The Kadett ends up all out over the grass. Somehow they all get out the other side in one piece. Well done to all of them for keeping that lot together across the top of the hill. That's one of the fastest, scariest points on the track, to have so many cars in a small area, especially with the Kadett struggling to grip, but they all got away with it. At the front, and the Beetle had led from the off, and we feared the Beetle might bugger off at the front of the field. However, the two Mustangs would catch it and simply outdrag it down the long straight. However, around the corners was where the Beetle made up its lap time, and interestingly, after I'd got mullered by the Mustangs in the early stages of the race, once I'd got the hang, once I'd got the kind of confidence in my Monte Carlo, I was setting just as fast lap times as these guys, and all of our cars got speed in very, very different ways. King Cobra, the fastest of the lot in a straight line. The Beetle, incredibly fast around the corners. Both me and the Foxbody were a little bit similar in that we both had decent straight line speed. We're both quicker than the Beetle, but we were also not too bad through the corners, so we're quicker than the King Cobra through the corners. It's a fascinating battle between this group of cars. It would have been much better had we all been closer from the start. It would be interesting to see how it had, or certainly if I'd learned how to drive my car quicker around this track, it would have been interesting to see how it would have gone. As it was, the King Cobra was to take victory as a lap down Galant loses control coming across that crest. Very easy to catch out cars there, and the rather crazy Galant had some issues. Yeah, it was an interesting final couple of laps. Our actual lap times between the top 4 of us were all very, very similar, despite our cars being strong in different areas of the track. But yeah, Mustang 1-2 in this race, and certainly an interesting track, Road Atlanta, for car builds. Our final race would go to the Silverstone International Circuit in the pouring rain. Things would go very wrong for a BMW. Hit the puddle very hard off the start line and just speared the car sideways, so some of us having to scramble to avoid that one. Of course, the standing water around here, always a big risk. Standing water, always dangerous around this track, as a Cyclone finds out. I think Cyclone put a wheel on the grass and just tipped the car sideways right in front of the field. Amazingly, most of the cars managed to avoid that one. That is not a sight that you want to see. I was in the middle of all of this as well. Again, a little bit like Catalonia, it was try and survive. Some of the cars having the odd issue. Most of the cars made it through. Only a few cars had big offs, but yeah, in the wet, things can often get just that little bit more difficult. Down this back straight was about the only place that my Monte Carlo was good around this wet circuit. Yeah, the Chevy did not fare so well. Out here, the Mustang that we're following at the moment was struggling with straight line speed, so it did get mullered down the straight, but it was immediately closed right back onto my Chevy on the exit of that corner. I go defensive in towards the next turn, so they can't quite do anything. Integra's fighting his way up the inside, but it's not quite going to work. He's going to be forced to go the long way around as the Mustang keeps himself to the inside. My my Chevy, well, you get a nice close-up of me fighting, trying to find grip. I thought having the massive 345s on the rear of the Monte Carlo, despite the fact I do already have standard tyres, I thought that might work. It doesn't. There wasn't enough grip, quite simply, from my car to quite deal with this track. But for now, I was just about holding my own. I wasn't the only one having issues in the wet. Leading the way was a AE86. He started off with a huge lead, started from pole, managed to drive away from the field, but after a couple of laps, some very quick cars started catching in the form of a BMW and a Volkswagen Beetle. And while the Toyota had the straight line speed, yes, really struggled. He just couldn't carry the corner speed. You see this car sliding his way around. That's through turn one. The BMW just drives straight past it. And there's a huge speed difference between those two cars through that first corner. The Toyota just simply doesn't have the grip to really fight with these cars around here. Now is the Beetle's turn to be having a look, trying to find a way past. Couldn't quite get alongside at this stage. And of course, now we have come to the straight, and despite the Toyota sliding his way onto the straight, the Beetle gets up alongside. Yeah, the A86 will out-drag it down here, but he wouldn't last long against these far superior handling cars. And around here, yeah, that was quite useful, and I too was having issues with the Monte Carlo. I was slowly slipping down through the field, was getting caught by an MX-5, was doing my best to try and defend, but there was just only so much that I could really do against these cars. Had to make the most of whatever little bits of straight line speed I could get, but Master was simply so much faster through the corner, could drive around the outside of me even when I went super defensive. So yeah, it was a little bit problematic for me. I actually really had fears of rolling my car through this. The Monte Carlo went up on two wheels quite a lot through the earlier races, so I had fears I might end up on my roof. I fortunately didn't. I managed to keep it all on the road. However, in these wet conditions, I just couldn't carry the corner speed of these cars. The MX-5 was around the outside, managed to out-drag him down here, but it's got so much more grip through the next corner that he would get past. It would not hold the position quite yet because of the straight line speed of my Monte Carlo, and Integra was coming to join in the fight as well, and the Integra much better through the corners as well than my Chevy. I would get past, I would retake the position, however I wasn't far enough ahead to really defend it. I take the inside line, I try and be neat and tidy. The MX-5, so much more grip, is straight around the outside. Great overtaking manoeuvre to manage to get around the outside of that corner. Down towards the next turn still, we're side by side. The Mazda on the inside, and there's nothing that I could quite do to fend that one off. And now he's passed. I can't really fight back too much. I had to try and get a really good run down here, but you just visibly see the gap that the Mazda can pull coming out of these turns. And the Bohr Monte Carlo, yeah, was struggling. Not my best wet weather car, that is for sure. And it wasn't long before these two cars would go and find the AE86, who was also struggling for that grip. And it was a similar story. The MX-5 come breezing past first, and then as we come down towards the next corner, Integra was straight around the outside to make up the position as well. Yeah, some of these cars were struggling a little bit with these wet conditions, but that's some of the challenges that these races can throw up. Further back, as the race progressed, there was a fairly hefty battle going over the midfield positions. This Civic was battling his way with a Mustang. The Civic with a little bit more straight line speed, the Mustang with a little bit better handling. Fairly even, though, between the pair of them. The Civic ending up, though, just getting a little bit swamped by the cars around him. The thing is, they managed to get themselves into trouble towards the next corner. The Civic spots an opportunity. He'll say thank you very much and get back past both of these cars as they run towards the line. The Mustang, though, trying to be brave, trying to hold it around the outside. That is a really nasty place to be going around the outside, the final corner. It's not a nice turn to be doing in the dry, especially, but yeah, in the wet it is quite a tough one around the outside. Got to be careful not to dip a wheel on the curb. Seen many an incident with the nasty Silverstone curbs. The Civic not quite in a position to fight back on the inside. Mustang does run wide. Honda tries to get to the inside, but can't quite fend the Mustang off for much longer. At the front, though, it was the BMW that was leading the way and led for the majority of the race. As they came on this final lap, the Beetle had very gradually closed. They'd remained fairly close throughout the race, and the Beetle was running out of opportunities to find a way past. The BMW went a little bit defensive towards these final corners and promptly messed up. Managed to outbrake himself. Don't know if he locked up a brake or what he did. Managed to run wide. Could have hit a puddle out there. Either way, the poor M3, having led for the majority of the race, would throw it all away right at the very end. So the Beetle would take victory from the BMW in second place. The MX-5 coming home in third. Yeah, it always sucks when you manage to lose a race on the last lap, but it's a surprisingly easy place to outbrake yourself down at that corner. Yeah, the wet weather throwed up some interesting conundrums. My Monte Carlo had been pretty good. Definitely had good pace at Road Atlanta. Catalonia stuck in battles for a large amount of that, but not a good wet weather car, that Chevy. But yeah, the racing itself had been good fun. These cars had as they often do this sort of racing. Plenty of crazy opening laps, plenty of action throughout the field. What more could you possibly want? Anyway, that is it for this week's FailRace versus the community. The next one shall be held on Thursday, the 18th of February. We are going to be racing open D-Class cars. So any cars in D-Class. If you want to sign up and take part in that, then you can go to our forums. There will be a link in the description. Find the FailRace versus the community section, and you will be able to sign up in there. But that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.